Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here doing a video which hopefully won't crap out on me like it just did, but doesn't look like it's doing it so far. Uh, this is regarding the recent news about Manowar's Karl Logan and his arrest for child pornography, and my thoughts on Manowar in general over the years, and also sort of a defense of Manowar in a way. Not specifically Karl Logan, but the band itself, and explanation and everything. Realize I look like shit. I just woke up. I don't care. This is one of the off the cuff videos where I don't really take a lot of preparation or anything like that. But anyways, so I'm gonna just first preempt this whole thing about Karl Logan by explaining my liking of Manowar and how that evolved and what happened with that. So, back in the day, I was and still remain a huge metal fan. Will be for life, no matter what anybody says, no matter how politically or musically incorrect it is, because I have stuck through the thick and thin with metal, and I will never fucking not like it, no matter what anybody sarcastically proclaims or says anything to me, no matter, even if they're my friends, by the way. Fuck you. Anyways, this is about I have no reason to be so defensive. That doesn't bode well for, I'm trying to get less defensive about shit and just be like, yeah, I just like it. Fuck it. I don't care what people think. People question me about it. Well, yeah, I like it. That's all I got to say. Anyways, this was at a time when metal times were more lean, so to speak. They were back in the day when metal was not cool. Alternative rock and rave culture were really big. I kind of go into this in my 1995 The Death of Metal video. So my mom had gotten this streaming music thing, which is it wasn't an internet thing, but it was like this thing where you can get all this free music that streams and stuff. It's like this box or something that came. It was almost like cable. And she had this thing that had a metal station, and I heard 2 songs by Manowar, specifically, I think it was like Ride the Dragon and Brothers of Metal Warriors. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of just like Judas Priest, but it's just missing something that, Judas Priest has. He's about this metal thing, this fantasy thing. I liked it, but it was just too dry or something, the production. And it was from Triumph of Steel, obviously. So I kind of made fun of Manowar. I kind of confused them with the band Thor, because I had read earlier there was this band that said they were barbarians and they ate drumsticks of meat on stage and flexed their big muscles and wore like armor and shit. And that happened to be Thor, but Manowar were also barbarian warrior guys or whatever. So I kind of was like, Manowar do that? Oh, that's interesting. It was like, I wanted to hear it, but I was just like underwhelmed by the Triumph of Steel tracks I had heard. So a couple of years go by, and one of my good friends was into Manowar, and it was like kind of metal was starting to sort of peek through post 95. Was kind of making a little resurgence. Some of the new metal bands, and new metal as I call it, new metal bands like Korn were kind of making an appearance and stuff. They were starting to push a little bit. It wasn't as uncool to like metal anymore, but it still wasn't really accepted like even it is now to some extent, ironically. But that's a whole other story. So my friend was into Manowar, and he played a few tracks for me. I'm like, that's pretty funny. He kind of had a tongue-in-cheek, thoughts about it and so forth. It's just, it was like he liked it, but he also made fun of it and laughed at it at the same time, which happens with a lot of stuff. And, same thing with King Diamond and stuff, some of the stuff. So anyways, I kind of liked it a little bit more, but this is what happened. So I got into black metal. This was after, I had stopped wearing these pants. These are not the same pants, but I rebought some Jinko jeans just for shits and giggles recently. And, just because I want to bring the 90s back since the 80s are back and Stranger Things and all that shit, I bought some Jinko jeans just for fun. I actually like the jeans. Anyways, I wore these Jinkos and I was trying to be, into the rave thing a little bit. And fucking my friend was into all that, and goth and industrial. And I still like a lot of that shit, ironically. I mean, I got into it and then I still like some of it. So, or a lot of it, actually. It's way better than a lot of modern shit. Anyways, I'm dating myself here, but whatever. So I got into black metal, and I got into some of these, like Merciful Fate, King Diamond, stuff like that. This is before I got really deeply into power metal, which I did, some of the other stuff that I got into later. But I got into this band Bathory, and one of the albums that really I liked was Blood on Ice, which had, come out. And it was like this Viking metal thing. So, and my friend was playing some Manowar, some early Manowar. And it was like, what the hell? And it had this like beat, like this triplet thing. And I was like, that sounds like Bathory. Wait, Bathory must have listened to Manowar. So I started checking out their early albums, and I bought a couple of their early albums. And I was like, wow, this is way different than their later stuff in some ways. And I just fell in love with it. Absolutely. Into Glory Ride, Sign of the Hammer, which is still my favorite, and I have on vinyl. And I just, I devoured it. I got into the power and prog and all this shit and all this stuff. And, and Manowar remained one of my favorite bands. I mean, so much that I actually went out and got the fucking Sign of the Hammer tattooed for life. So I'm a big Manowar fan, and I still am. I don't care what people say. They make fun of it. And what Manowar means to me is like a lot of their lyrics are about triumphing over adversity. In fact, I say that's the theme of Manowar pretty much. If you want to boil it down, it's kind of like the Rocky movies or something. It's like you're the underdog and you're fighting the world for what you believe in and your self-esteem, your life. And a lot of the times when I really was in some down moments, it's going to sound really cheesy, but listening to like songs like Courage or Mountains really saved me from a lot of despair. I'll just be honest. And, and I also laughed too, because, that's part of the thing. And my stage name is Mad Warrior because on Hell on Earth Part 1, which is one of their DVDs, there was a contest for like German Headbangers Ball or something where we have the mightiest Man Warrior who will win this contest. And I was like, Matt Warrior? So that's like my stage name for all my music projects. Anyways, because of fucking Manowar. So they mean a lot to me. Now, there was a certain point where things started getting weird with Manowar. And I would say that's probably about 2006 through 2007. 2007, particularly. After the Gods of War album, things were starting to get kind of weird with the Manowar camp. There was like this lawsuit between Rhapsody of Fire and Joey DeMaio, whatever. And there was like all this stuff that was, these rumors and stuff about Scott Columbus and drum machines or programmed drums. Now, Scott Columbus was a great drummer. I'd say Into Glory Ride is a masterpiece partly because of his drum sound and his attitude on the drums. Rest in peace, Scott Columbus. And they did this EP, I forgot what it was called. They were going to do this huge opus, like a sequel to, not a sequel to Gods of War, but it was like this big concept album with this like German fantasy writer and all this shit. And basically what happened, they scrapped the album, and then it was just all this weird drama and shit, and there's all these rumors, and it was just like things were just getting really pathetic. Like they would say one thing, then it was just this dragged out process. And Scott Columbus left Manowar, and they got their original drummer on the first album, and it just was like, man, they just and that EP was okay. The EP they did, I fucking forgot the name right now, but it was going to be part of this huge opus, and things were just getting kind of we were in the Manowar camp, and there was a lot of like just stuff about like how they treat their opening bands, and like there was a lot of rumors. I'm not saying they're true. I'm just saying that there was just a lot of stuff. And I started to kind of like look down on Manowar because it was just like, yeah, you know, they're over the hill. They've kind of jumped the shark, you know, so to speak, or jumped the dumpster, which is another thing I want to popularize because of The Walking Dead. Jump the dumpster thing is when the show went downhill after Glenn jumped the dumpster. His jump the shark is a term from Happy Days when Fonzie jumps the shark, and that became a kind of popular thing to say. So about things that, you know, are over the hill or past their prime, whatever you want to call it. So I was like, well, there's, you know, I still love the early Manowar, and I like a lot of the later stuff too. So I'm just going to leave it at that. You know, maybe one day I'll see Manowar live. And then they were going to play the United States in Chicago. The tickets were fucking outrageous. It was like $90. And I was like, you know, Metallica charges pretty high for their tickets nowadays. But, you know, I went with this guy, and we saw it, and it was just like half of it was like jerking off about Manowar, like these film things, you know, with, you know, they're talking about the 30th anniversary of Kings of Metal. It's like, oh, or 25th anniversary, I think it was. And it was like, Kings of Metal is such a great album. And then Joey DeMaio was like, half the fucking show was like just giving these stupid speeches about metal. And they played not too long. It could have been a longer show. I heard they played a Columbus, Ohio show years before that was like 3 hours long, and they played all this old shit. So it was a really disappointing show. The songs they did play when they were playing sounded fucking awesome, and they didn't play enough old shit. I'll just be honest, you know. It was just kind of ridiculous. It was kind of a disaster because they were going to play this place in Chicago, and then that got canceled, and they moved the venues. So part of this video, I just wanted to say, like, Manowar kind of fucked themselves over, in my opinion, because they got so full of themselves in a certain way. It's like, we're so big in Europe. We could play these huge festivals and get all these groupies and shit. America sucks. Yeah, it's like Iron Maiden says that they, you know, Bruce Dickinson bashes Americans some of the time, but they play everywhere in America pretty much. They don't give a shit. They'll just play. It's like, Americans' musical tastes suck. We're gonna go play Fairbanks next week. It's like, well, you know, it's one thing to bash Americans and American fans on stage, and it's one thing just like fucking ignore America for years and just play these European festivals and shit like Manowar did. And there's all, like I said, there's a lot of hearsay and rumor and speculation. And by the way, well, I'm going to get to this. I'll get to that later about Ross the Boss. But so this thing comes out about Karl Logan the other day about child porn and him watching child porn and getting busted with it. I'm just like, oh my God, this is just another fucking disaster to befall this band that, you know, basically in many ways influenced my life in a lot of ways. In positive ways, usually. I'd say it's like almost like the metal version of Tony Robbins in my life. It's been, you know, just how they've influenced me and stuff. And I was like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ, why does this have to happen? Because people don't understand Manowar. They just think they're just these silly guys in loincloths. They don't really know. And first and foremost, there are like people, more knowledgeable metal people do know about Manowar and like, oh, the first 4 albums are great, blah, 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 you know, people like that. And then there's a second type of person that's just like, well, you know, I like a lot of their stuff. I mean, and there's a third type of person that's, Manowar sucks. What the fuck? This shit is so ridiculous. It's like metal isn't already ridiculous. Come on, man. Fuck you. You know? But I think part of the reason why they say that is because Manowar never... They took themselves too seriously in a certain way, and then they fucked up their career because of these stupid moves. We've been on over 10 record labels, man. We've been kicked off every label. That's what they said in one of the Hell on Earth's like interviews or something, or one of their DVDs. It was like, oh, great, you've been on 10 record labels? What does that say about you? It's like this becomes this like, you know, like reframing of like their glory of not selling out by being on 10 different record labels. But actually, in actuality, if you look at the business behind that, and if you look at the behind the scenes, it's probably more fucked up than that. It's probably, they're just being dicks. Not Eric Adams, but a certain bass player, obviously, because Eric Adams seems like a fucking swell guy, honestly. So they just, it was just kind of just these dumb moves, business moves. It's like comparing him to Thor. I saw Thor at this, smaller venue a couple of weeks ago. And there wasn't a lot of people there, but it's like, well, he doesn't take himself too seriously, and he loves the music. It's like if Manowar had a little bit more of that attitude and just like kind of, were able to settle for smaller venues and not require these big demands, outrageous, ridiculous demands of venues, which is another thing I've heard about them. And all this stuff, it's like, it's all for the fans. It's all for your fucking ego. That's what it's for, and whatever money you're making from that. I mean, I've heard a lot of rumors about Manowar over the years about their money or lack thereof, or this or that, or they throw all this money at these festivals that they do or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I don't care. But my point is that they could have been bigger in the States if they would have just had a little bit more humility about them and more willingness to not compromise their music, not compromise their image, not compromise what they're doing, but compromise other aspects of their career in a certain way that makes them more accessible to people. So if they would have been like that, if they would have been like Thor, people don't make fun of Thor. Thor is more ridiculous than Manowar in some ways. Thunder on the Tundra and shit. I mean, so Manowar fucked themselves up. They're to blame for a lot of their current misfortunes. Now, with regards to Karl Logan, a lot of people hate Karl Logan. He's like the Yannick Gers of Manowar or whatever. He's the whipping boy for everybody. I actually don't like David Schenkel in Manowar less. Or I like David Schenkel in Manowar less than Karl Logan, because David Schenkel was kind of too jazz for Manowar, in my opinion. And I like jazz, but it's just like, it didn't fit to me, his style. Louder Than Hell, particularly, I like the style that Karl Logan played. And, it was very well done, in my opinion. In some ways, the early Manowar with Ross the Boss is better, because Ross just had that feel that fits. And that's why when you listen to like a lot of these Viking metal bands, they pay tribute to Manowar because those early albums, and there would be no Viking metal. By the way, this is a side note. There would be no Viking metal, and half the epic power metal bands wouldn't exist, in my opinion, without Manowar, because how much influence they had, and how much the subject matter was rare for the time. A lot of it, There was a few bands probably talking about Vikings or, medieval fantasy stuff, but it's like Manowar kind of brought that to metal, a lot of those elements. So anybody that says, oh, Manowar sucks, really fucking just tell them that. The first 4 albums, Bathory influence, all that stuff. And Enslaved were influenced by Bathory and Cipherum and, all this stuff. It's just, it wouldn't exist without Manowar. Anyways, that's just a side note. So Karl Logan's guitar, it kind of diminished through the years. There was less guitar solos. There was more orchestral stuff. A lot of people don't like those albums. I really happen to think that they kind of returned on Warriors of the World in some ways from the previous 2 albums, because they had that those triplet songs again too. Like a lot of the epic feel of the early Manowar was kind of translated to the modern production that they were doing. So I liked Warriors of the World. I liked Gods of War. I did not like Lord of Steel, and I liked some of the songs very much, but I thought it was very lackluster in comparison. And that's really where my Manowar thing died down, was that album. And then they had the whole ruckus with these 2 different mixes, and one of them was only available in a magazine, and all this Metal Hammer Germany or something. And you had this rare steel mix or whatever the fuck it's called. It was. And that mix actually happened to be better in some ways. This other one sounded really muffled and like AM radio. And this other one, the Metal Hammer one, sounded a lot better, even though there were more solos and more vocals on the other one. It's like, what the fuck are they doing? You know, what the hell is wrong with these people? They used to have, I mean, back in the 80s, they didn't need fucking 2 different mixes. One mix was good, and maybe Into Glory Ride was meant to be a demo originally, but it sounds fucking magnificent today in comparison to, like, Lord of Steel. So anyways, that's a little rant about their production and just crawling up their own ass, which basically they did in a lot of ways. But back to Karl Logan. So he didn't really have a lot to do with the songwriting. He wrote a couple things on Louder Than Hell that were pretty cool, you know, co-wrote things. But what had happened, you know, it's just like he was just kind of there, you know, it's just like he played some solos and stuff. And, you know, they had that thing with all 3 guitarists on stage, you know, years back. And honestly, Ross kind of stole the show, in my opinion, because he just had that feel and that tone that the other guitarists didn't have as much, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And that was kind of, you know, to me, that was kind of the end of Manowar in a way. That last, you know, that last show that festival they did with all 3 guitarists and all their drummers and stuff was like this reunion thing, you know, just for the show. That was kind of, I marked that as kind of the end of Manowar, and that Scott Columbus died and all that whole thing, which is pretty fucking sad, whatever, you know, whatever you make of that. So this news comes the other day about Karl Logan, and I'm just like, oh my God, you know, what did he do? So, I mean, there's been some speculation. Now, he was always kind of a quiet guy that seemed kind of a little distant from the rest of the guys in Manowar. I'm not saying that he was like, just like if you watch the Hell on Earth DVDs, he's like, you know, I'm sharpening the picks, like autism or something. I'm not saying that's autism, but, you know, he's just like, I'm sharpening the picks. Yeah, you know, fucking, those guys are like, yeah, man, this chick, get her on stage. It's those fucking, whatever I think it's kind of rehearsed, some of that shit that they did on stage with the women and stuff, but, you know, so it's just like, so cheesy, but it's funny, but it's cheesy. It's problematic, obviously, to the PC culture now. But my speculation is that he probably, you know, looking at the police stuff, you know, with regards to that, he probably did look at child porn, and it was actual child porn. Now, there is one theory that is making the rounds, and I kind of speculated on it on Blabbermouth, because there's this thing with, you know, the Hell on Earth DVDs. Okay, this whole rock and roll groupie thing, you know, now it's like kind of passe in a certain way. I'm sure it fucking happens all the time. But back in the 70s and the 80s, Motley Crue talked about it in their book. There's these young groupies or underage, come backstage, want to have sex with a band. They're like, okay, I'm really stressed out by being on tour for 6 months straight. I'm going to have sex with this underage groupie, right? And it's like, you can say it's power dynamics, it's rape, all this feminist fucking bullshit, right? Or, you know, social, whatever the fuck, sociology, studies, ivory tower bullshit, right? Say all this shit, or you could say, well, these girls come from this kind of home, and they want to do this, it's their volition that they did it, and all this stuff, and you can, maybe the truth is somewhere in between, but anyways, it's bullshit that, you know, it would be bullshit that if this other theory about Karl Logan is true. So Manowar like to have people send videos of themselves, and they're like, you know, show us your tits, man. If you're a Manowar fan, you know, just be imitating Joey DeMille. And my theory, this is not my theory, but this is another guy's theory, because I joked about it on Blabbermouth. Oh, were the Hell on Earth DVDs evidence? Because they have these groupie, you know, scenes and stuff in them. And obviously in Europe, it's like the age of consent is probably, you know, a lot of times it's like 16, 17, and it's like, holy shit. So I was joking that like the police found that he was watching his own DVD of Hell on Earth, you know, and they they caught him on that. But another theory is like maybe an American fan that was underage sent him some nude pictures or something, and he got caught with it. You know, there's all sorts of stuff going on. The most likely thing, considering how weird, like, I don't know, not how weird he is, but just how, like, he seems a little different than the other guys. Just he always was like, I mean, not only is he the most scrawny guy in the band, not that that matters, but he just kind of seemed like he was off in his own kind of thing compared to the other guys. It probably is real, like, prepubescent, underage porn, blah, 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 you know, sex crime, fucking Law and Order SVU, kind of, you know, sex, you know, child porn, sex ring kind of stuff that the police were monitoring for a while and then found this guy, and it was Karl Logan. Actually, on another side note, Karl Logan is like a left-winger in this band that's like this kind of almost sort of right-wingish message. And Ross Boss is like a diehard Republican. It's just a really weird setup with all that. But anyways, enough about politics for this one. So Karl Logan, you know, probably was busted with prepubescent, regular, horrid sex crime kind of porn stuff, child porn stuff. But the theory that it was some underage fan that sent him some nude photos or something, in my opinion, that is way less, how could I say this, repugnant than if it's some kind of, you know, child porn sex ring that he got caught looking at child porn. Now, I know a lot of people might have a problem with me saying that, but it's more plausible in the whole history of rock and sex and, you know, all this stuff with groupies and all this stuff. It's more plausibly excusable, in my opinion. And now, I don't think it's you know, I don't think he was caught with some, you know what I mean, because it probably, you know, Manowar probably have a server, you know, of their website, and people have these fan photos and all this shit. It could be just that. It could be that, like, some separate thing for Karl Logan they caught him with, and, you know, they scrubbed the servers for all these pictures and all stuff, you know, I don't know. But it's very problematic with that, with regards to that. It was probably just some regular, good old, I'm using that term sarcastically, child porn, unfortunately. But it could be the situation that I outlined. And in fact, it was like actually some magazine, I think it was a German magazine guy that came out with that theory. It was very plausible about the, you know, the fan sending pictures or whatever. So anyways, will either scenario, if they play out as being what happened, affect me listening to Manowar or liking Manowar? Fuck no. And I'll explain why. Now, in the 90s, black metal bands burned churches, killed people, and a case of few people associated with dissection may have even raped people. So the people that like conflate sex crimes and murder, some people do, and I still don't understand why rape and murder, or I think rape is a little lesser than murder, but some people like almost think it's like the opposite. I still don't get that. And I'm just honestly, I don't know if I'm ignorant or just don't understand it. I think they're both heinous crimes, but I still think that murder is worse. I don't know, in the eyes of law, it's worse than rape. But maybe it's the politically correct culture, feminism, whatever, that people are saying rape is worse than murder and shit. But anyways, that's another fucking whole other video series. But so... Anyways, I think there were some involved in some rape too, according to some you know, some stuff that was not resolved or solved, and, you know, some of the members of Dissection. So I started listening to black metal. I was like, I heard about these crimes, like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. But I just listened to the music. I was able to separate the music from the messenger or the person. So, I mean, we all know that Jimi Hendrix may have beat his girlfriends. John Lennon was a dick to his first wife and his first son. He was, you know, we all know that these guys live these fucked up lives, and they're not exactly role models. And also in the 90s, there was another thing called gangster rap that got popular, where people were, you know, you might have heard about Snoop Dogg and his, like, involvement in a drive-by shooting and all this shit. It's like, well, am I going to stop? And people draw the line at this, you know, this, like, pedophilia thing. Or any kind of sexual well, the Me Too thing with sexual harassment or any sexual stuff. It's like, well, fucking, and then there were some rappers that were rape sexual harassment stuff, and people still listen to rap. You know, all these Dr. Dre was involved in some of this shit. I think it was more on the sexual side and some of this harassment of a reporter or something. People buy beats all the time. People are fucking hypocrites and are inconsistent, fucked up pieces of shit. So I'm excusing myself for being an inconsistent piece of shit. I'm not a piece of shit, but I'm saying I'm going to listen to black metal. I'm going to listen to Manowar. I'm hoping that Ross the Boss rejoins, because one final tour with Ross the Boss would just make everything awesome. It would clean things up for Manowar. In my opinion, it would clear things for them, because they're like, oh, wow, you know, they're doing this. And it would distract from this Karl Logan bullshit, nonsense, bullshit, shenanigans. So that's what I have to say about Manowar. I remain a Manowar fan because their music transcends any fucking horrible shit that Karl Logan did with his fucking skinny ginger ass, looking at whatever he was looking at. Any Joey DeMaio fucking egotistical business fucking shady bullshit nonsense where he has to buy more grease for his glass eye or whatever. Well, that was a rumor that he had glass eye and all this shit. Never mind. Or any Eric Adams cheesy bow hunting video will not diminish my love of Manowar. And that's all I gotta fucking say.